Chapter 12, Hillary's Lost Summer. It was the spring of 1971. Hillary Rodham was a second-year law student at Yale who had recently started dating fellow student Bill Clinton. Within weeks of their relationship, Hillary had to decide how she was going to spend her summer and told Bill she was going to Oakland, California to intern at the law firm of True Half, Walker & Bernstein.
I told Bill about my summer plans to clerk at True Half, Walker & Bernstein, a small law firm in Oakland, California. And he announced that he would like to go to California with me.
So with Hillary deciding to spend her summer in Oakland, Bill decided to tag along. He had planned on working in the South for George McGovern's presidential campaign for the Democratic presidential nomination, but according to Bill, he, quote, had the rest of my life for my work and my ambition. I loved her and I wanted to see if it could work out for us, end quote. So the fairly new couple headed to California and moved into a small apartment not far from the University of California at Berkeley. True Half, Walker & Bernstein was one of the most radical law firms of its time. It was known for its support of constitutional rights, civil liberties, and radical causes.
This wasn't just any law firm. This was probably either the #1 or #2 most left-wing law firm in America at that time. One of the partners was a communist. A second partner had been a communist and had actually left the party but didn't talk about that publicly. And they represented all kinds of left-wing causes.
Some of those causes turned into the most controversial cases of the era, including draft resistors, the Black Panthers, self-avowed communists, and one-time ultra-left-wing fugitive Angela Davis. Remember, this was just a couple of years after Hillary, the Wellesley student, wrote her senior thesis on radical left-wing organizer Saul Alinsky. That thesis was later locked up and hidden from the public for fear that the First Lady's left-wing tendencies would be an embarrassment to President Clinton. But her left-wing sympathies apparently didn't end with her graduation from Wellesley. Just take a look at the resumes of 3 of the firm's 4 partners and their association with the Communist Party.
The first was a gentleman by the name of Bob Truehaft, who had been a communist, card-carrying communist in the 40s and 50s. Another lawyer at this firm was a woman by the name of Doris Bryn Walker. She had been the head of the National Lawyers Guild, and she remains a communist to this day. And the third partner at the firm was Mal Bernstein, and he supported many of these causes in terms of representing people that were communists that didn't want to take loyalty oaths. But he says he was never a member of the party.
So what was it that attracted young Miss Rodham to this firm? Was there a deciding factor? After all, she was focusing on child custody cases, so why travel thousands of miles across the country to work at this particular law firm? Some people say that she was referred to this law firm by a professor. Another story says that she was referred to them by a friend. But in the book, A Woman in Charge, author Carl Bernstein tells us what he thinks, saying, quote, Hillary's attraction to the firm was not ideology, but rather its defense of constitutional causes, end quote. But in the same book, Robert Truehaft, one of the firm's communist partners, is quoted as saying, the only reason I could think of, because none of us knew her, was because we were a so-called movement law firm at the time. There was no reason except politics for a girl from Yale. She was in sympathy with all the left causes, end quote. Sympathy with all the left causes or sympathy with the Communist Party. But as research shows us, Hillary's involvement in the firm's cases wasn't that intense. Since she was just one of the summer's law clerks, her duties were limited to drafting motions and reading through transcripts. She did mostly grunt work and recalls that experience in her memoir. I spent most of my time working for Mal Bernstein, researching, writing legal motions and briefs for a child custody case. But her interest in the firm's cases is that drew her to the radical practice, and perhaps the events leading up to her clerkship trained her for this. If we go back to New Haven in 1970 in the criminal trial of Black Panthers leader Bobby Seale, well, that was underway. He was on trial for kidnapping and murdering another member of the Panthers. As interest in the trial grew at Yale, many of the radicals on campus started believing that Seale would not be able to receive a fair trial. As students prepared for a mass rally in support of the Black Panthers on trial, it is said that Hillary Clinton, too, was involved. According to the book, Murder in the Model City by Paul Bass and Douglas Ray, Hillary led a student committee that monitored the trial and offered legal advice to demonstrators who got arrested. Now, the timing of the next part is unclear, but at some point during the trial, Bob Truhaft and his wife Jessica stopped in New Haven and threw a party to raise money for the Panthers' defense. And according to reports, Hillary attended the rally. Now the situation brings us up to her clerkship.
One thing I discovered during my research is that during the summer of 1971, while Mrs. Clinton was there, Bob Truhaft, one of the partners at this firm, was representing a Black Panther member. He was a friend of the famous Black Panther Huey Newton in what was basically a cop-killing trial in Oakland, California.
But on top of the Black Panther case, there were many others that a future president would not want to associate themselves with. Some stem from working on cases involving draft dissents and other issues dealing with Vietnam. Then there was the case of Angela Davis, the communist and black revolutionary who was charged with murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy charges from a shooting that left a judge dead. Ironically, after Hillary left the law firm and turned into the First Lady of Arkansas, the firm's wild antics continued to follow her. There was the case of the Arkansas prison system that came to light soon after Bill became governor in 1979. There were allegations that the inmates in Arkansas jails were living in inhumane conditions. A key player in the publicity in that case was Jessica Mitford, the wife of firm partner Bob Truhaft. Mitford's involvement in the case had to do with an Arkansas prison escapee, James Dean Walker. He had been convicted of murder of a Little Rock police officer. While in jail, he had won furloughs for religious work and failed to return to the prison from one of those jobs. He fled to California and was later arrested on drug charges. Arkansas officials tried for his extradition back to Arkansas, but his lawyers fought it. Since Mitford was involved in the case, she decided to use her connection to the Clintons to get the state of Arkansas to drop the extradition or to completely pardon Walker. So while Hillary herself was never an acting lawyer on any of these cases, her interest in working with a firm still raises many questions and opens just another part of her questionable past. And if she had nothing to hide from, why does she bury it so deep in her past?
She doesn't square herself with what went on back then. Does she regret having worked for this firm, or does she embrace it? And she's sort of driven it down the middle. It's kind of interesting that in 25 years in public life, nobody has really squarely put the question to her about why she ended up there. And
the summer of 1971 remains a mystery to all of us. Why is Hillary so secretive about this part of her life as well? And will anyone ever step forward to confront her about her connections with the communist law firm? Or is this another chapter in the Clinton past that will never be closed?